16 years into your existence, you have your commitment to excellence has been earned by the award, the coveted ISO 9001-2015 certification. This is a testament to your legacy of excellence and innovation, coupled with your commitment to providing world-class education and research programs. Your courses, ranging from engineering to oceanography and from maritime history, maritime law and maritime security, as I mentioned earlier, encompasses the entire range of activities within the maritime sector. Your alumni, and I've had the opportunity to interact with some of them, are some of the best in the world, making both the IMU and the country proud. Dear students and friends, this city, the city that the IMU is headquartered in, is steeped in history. Chennai is inextricably linked with India's maritime history and trade. It has been so for centuries, being a permanent harbour and port, not only of the Coromandel coast, but also of peninsular India, which is surrounded by the oceans on three sides, and which in many senses defines our country as a maritime nation. We are all cognizant of the fact that India is the only country after whom an ocean has been named, and that also is a testimony to our history of maritime trade and seafaring. UNESCO, an organization that I had the opportunity to work in, has recognized Chennai port as one of the major ports of India and a gateway for cargo for over 147 years. Indeed, Chennai's history can be traced to the time that the Portuguese established the Sao Tome harbour in 1522, which the British then in 1640 made into Fort St. George and established the permanent presence of Chennai port as we know it. But our maritime history of this region and this part of the country dates centuries back. The famous dynasties of South India, the Cholas, the Cheras, the Pandyas, established strong maritime links with distant lands, Java, Sumatra, the Malayan Peninsula, Thailand, and even China. During the Chola dynasty, which ranged from the 3rd to 13th century AD, extensive sea trade existed and new harbours with quarters, warehouses, and workshops were established. I'm saying this because as students of maritime management, you should know that 1,000 years ago, in this very part of our country, you had very, very good infrastructure and management practices. Ship repair yards, wharfs, lighthouses were built along the Indian coast to support the Cholas' powerful navy and maritime ships. Indeed, it was these merchants, it was the merchants that through which India's culture, language, and spirituality spread far and wide into Southeast Asia and East Asia. Even today, in the countries of Southeast Asia, you will have very strong evidence of Indian culture. And as someone who has served in Southeast Asia, in Vietnam, and more recently in Thailand, and traveled extensively across Southeast Asia, I can say that you can see Indian culture, linguistic evidence, and spirituality in every facet of life, not just in the monuments, but in the daily lives of people in these countries. Now, just an anecdote is that a very good friend of mine, the ambassador of Indonesia in India, ambassador to our country, based in New Delhi, and her name is Ina Krishnamurthy. But her family does not recollect any links with India. In other words, in recent history, there is no link with India. But clearly, some Krishnamurthy from this part of the world has gone to Indonesia. And today, those historic links are the ones that serve us well. These are links in history, but pervade even today. And I think this is what is quite incredible about our history as a maritime nation. And the reason I am going through history is not to take you through some facts that you may already know, but to establish the fact that we have been a maritime nation for centuries. And today, as we see the revitalization of our shipping industry, of our seafaring industry, of everything that you are learning and the Indian Maritime Institute is imparting by way of education and training, is an area in which we are reclaiming our rightful place in the domain of maritime. I would say, voyages, maritime adventures, and the maritime domain as a whole. It is, of course, easy to forget the maritime aspect of our country's borders, our country's, let's say, boundaries, when we are so consumed with our land borders. India has a land border over 15,000 kilometers. Many of our challenges have come from our land borders. But we also have a maritime border of 7,500 kilometers, to which you have to add that extensive exclusive economic zone. And the fact that we are the focal point for shipping lanes carrying trillions of dollars worth of cargo. The opportunities are there for the maritime route, but some of the most serious challenges to us also come for the maritime route. Those who colonized us came as traders, conquered us, and ruled us for over 200 years until we gained our freedom. And more recently, some of us would remember the incident of the terrorist attacks of 26/11 or the 26th of November 2008, when terrorists came and indulged in acts of terrorism in the city of London. These two events etched in history will tell us never to take our sea borders for granted and to always be vigilant against challenges that would come from the oceans. And friends, the world today is more complex than ever before. You have been witnessing or observing the conflicts in Europe, in the Middle East. These are conflicts far away, but they can have a direct impact in our lives in today's very interlinked and interconnected world. Let me give you one small example. In about a year ago, in fact, I think it's exactly a year since the Hamas launched an attack against Israel on 7th of October last year, and the Israel-Hamas conflict broke out, at which time the Houthis, the Houthis are a tribe based in Yemen. It's actually a non-state actor, I would say, today, started harassing shipping along the sea lanes with the Suez Canal. Now, as people interested and involved integrally in the maritime domain, I want to share with you how acts far away can impact on what we are doing. Shipping across the Suez Canal, which is very important for us, has dropped by, in volume terms, by 50%. And shipping along the longer route, along the Cape of Good Hope on the southern tip of Africa, has increased by 74%. The cost of shipping has gone up, as you would know, by 15 to 20%. That means our exporters and people in our country who are involved in businesses that involve transportation of cargo have greater competition to face because of the increased cost of shipping. Our exports to Europe, which take the Suez Canal route, has dropped by about 21%. So it can impact on our lives. So there is a lowering of transportation of cargo cargo not only impacts on our national security and our economy, but also on the well-being of so many who depend on the maritime domain for a living. And as you graduate from the Indian Maritime University, you carry with you, of course, a part of India's rich maritime legacy into your future. It is on this foundation, of course, that you will build your future and India's future credentials as a maritime power. And you have a unique opportunity to do this. You all are a part of our vision to become a developed country, a Viksit Bharat by 2047. In the next 6 years alone, from now until 2030, our GDP is expected to expand by between $4 to $5 trillion. We will become the third largest economy in the world. Now, if you take this figure of $4 to $5 trillion and compare it, when China grew at its fastest level between 2000 and 2010, when the entire world, the Western world, was supporting China in their endeavor to make it a manufacturing base and invest in China, the Chinese economy grew by $5 trillion. So this $5 trillion that we will add on will be a great leap forward. Demographically, we have a great advantage. We are a young country. The average age in India is 28 years. Many of you who are 25 years of age today will be 50 years in 2047 when we are looking at the vision of becoming a developed country. Many of us here who are your mentors, guides, teachers will encourage you to reach that, to endeavor to reach that level of a developed country by 2047. But the effort will be yours alone. Because in 2047, you will, those of you who are 25 today will be 50 by that time. So you have a huge opportunity. We have a demographic dividend. We are adding 1 million young people to the workforce every month. Those of you who are part of the IMU are privileged because you are among the best, the brightest. You've been selected for an outstanding educational path that will lead to outstanding careers in a domain that is a sunrise sector. I mean, we are today looking at our Maritime Vision 2030. We are looking at a Viksit Bharat. We are looking at doubling our shipbuilding capacity. We are looking at adding a very significant number to our seafarers. And you are at the vanguard of this effort. And the IMU is the mechanism and the institution that will take you to that heights, those heights that you see. Now, of course, shipping is very important to us because 95% of our shipping, and 95% of exports actually and trade goes to the maritime route. Only 5% of our trade is through other routes, which is by air or by land, etc. But our foreign policy, foreign trade policy vision also looks at our doubling or tripling our exports to $2 trillion by the year 2030, out of which $1 trillion will be merchandise exports, $1 trillion will be services. And if you talk about $1 trillion in merchandising exports itself, you can imagine the increased capacity in shipping terms that you have to create. I mean, not only ships, but containers, ports, and the people to man all of this. So as I said, you are in the right place. Your future, I think, is very much assured. And there are no heights that you cannot hope to achieve with hard work, dedication, and commitment. I have to add those. And of course, from a certain point of view, we have very sound maritime credentials. I mean, India today is recognized as a maritime nation, very different from what it was 10 or 15 years ago. And there are a few, I would say, framework areas where I think this is manifesting itself. And I just touch upon those because in my view, you already have studied these, you know these. The first is, of course, the Sagar Doctrine. Security and growth for all in the region is how we approach our maritime doctrine, especially with regard to our neighbors, when we talk about strengthening economic and security ties with our maritime neighbors, safeguarding our national interests on the maritime route. We also have what I have extensively spoken about, and of course it needs a lot of time, but I'll just touch briefly on it, is that we as a country, and in terms of our foreign policy and what we consider our maritime policy, I think Mr. Joshi will know that better than a lot of us, because it is part of our naval policy also. We are first responders and net security providers for those of our neighbors in the maritime domain. In other words, in the Indo-Pacific region, any country that faces, say, a national calamity or major difficulty can expect India to provide them with the sort of relief and support that they look to. Many of these are small countries, they're islands, they don't have the capacity, they don't have the wherewithal. When there was a cyclone in Banda Aceh in Indonesia, our naval ships were the first to reach that place. When there was Hurricane Ida hit the coast of Mozambique, again our naval ships were the first to go there and offer assistance. A range from Southeast Asia all the way to the east coast littoral of Africa. And of course, during COVID times, when countries were facing a once-in-a-century pandemic situation that they didn't know how to deal with, it is our naval ships under the Sagar doctrine that went off with medicines, equipment to fight COVID, doctors, paramedics, and went to a number of countries from Mauritius to Seychelles to Comoros and provided them, even Kuwait, and provided them with the support that they very much needed at that time. So we are first responders. When Maldives had a shortage of water, because they depend on desalination water, when the plant broke down, there was not enough drinking water in that country. It's Indian ships that went and provided them with drinking water. So when countries in our region know that when they are in trouble, it is India that will respond first and foremost to their aid. Net security providers, what does that mean? In today's day and age, as I said, it is not only states that pose a challenge, it is also non-state actors. You can have piracy, for example. Our ships have been patrolling the Gulf of Aden because it is in our interest to keep those lanes of shipping secure, because we rely on those lanes for a bulk of our export and import in our trade. So our naval ships are constantly on vigil on the Gulf of Aden, protecting others from piracy. And recently you would have seen that our Navy rescued 35 sailors from one of the ships that were being used as a mothership by the Somali pirates. Or other problems that surfaced, like pollution. When there was a major pollution problem by the grounding of a ship off the coast of Mauritius, our Coast Guard was there to protect. When there was a major fire off the coast of Sri Lanka on a merchant vessel, our Coast Guard was there to help in dealing with that problem. So we are also net security providers. We ensure that when you have any security concern, we are there to protect you. We work closely with our neighbors Sri Lanka and Maldives in providing a sort of a security cover in maritime terms. And I think this is something that our friends and neighbors, especially in the Western Indian Ocean, rely on. That we are a maritime power. We are increasingly there to help and protect. We are not there to coerce and conquer. We are there to help and protect. Something that we did centuries ago when the Cholas went out into Southeast Asia, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, and most of it was based on Pacific intercourse, trade, mendicants, spirituality, language, and all of our partners benefited from that approach. And today, in our foreign policy, when we talk about human-centric globalization, our approach is a human-centric approach. So whether it is to seek peace in the Ukraine or in the Middle East, I think we are the foremost of helping other countries and helping bring down tensions as a responsible global power. The other aspect, of course, you're familiar with is the blue economy. The potential of the blue economy in terms of deep sea mining, in terms of undersea minerals, in terms of coastal tourism, fisheries, aquaculture development. The Sagarmala project, which you're very familiar with, port-led development, and how we can promote the development of port infrastructure, coastal berths, road and rail projects, harbors, skill development projects, community development, cruise terminals, etc. Cruise, shipping has also become a very big industry. And I was quite surprised, and I realized that only during COVID, when these cruise liners came to a standstill, and we found that a bulk of those serving in these cruise ships, I mean the tourism cruise ships, were Indian citizens. A very good number of those working in that sector are Indian nationals. And like you, I think most of them have very significant, background in marine degrees, and I think they are the ones that are, in many senses, holding this industry together. So, the blue economy and Sagarmala projects, policies boost employment prospects for young people like yourself, unleashing our latent economic potential. The other thing which I mentioned was shipbuilding, and you recall that in the Global Maritime Summit held last year, Prime Minister Modi announced that Bharat would become one of the top 5 shipbuilding nations in the world. So this is again a part of our Make in India, Make for the World policy. The Maritime Vision, which I again mentioned, 2030, seeks to make India a top seafaring nation with world-class education. And of course, if you've seen that in the last 9 years, the number of seafarers have increased by 140%. In other words, that India's generating seafarers through the efforts of the Indian Maritime University primarily has resulted in our adding more than 1 lakh of people to that workforce of seafarers, to now bring it close to 3 lakhs. And if you see one more very interesting statistics which the Directorate General of Shipping has put out, it is that the number of women seafarers has gone up by over 500%. And today we have over 10,000 women seafarers that are working in this industry. And I want to tell you one thing that you may not know, that when this policy was implemented, you know who was the Director General of Shipping who was behind this policy? It is none other than your Vice Chancellor, Dr. Bhavani, who in her term as DG Shipping has not only ensured that the numbers of seafarers have increased in our country exponentially, but also women seafarers. And let me also tell you something that you are not supposed to know, but I know as a colleague in the service. She is one of the most brilliant IAS officers that our country has ever produced. Very understated. Never draws attention to achievements, but is always working for the success of whichever project or whichever ventures which she is involved in, and working in the service of our nation. And I have no doubt that as the Indian Maritime University starts implementing the vision of India becoming a top seafarer nation in the world through world-class education, training and research, at the helm of the Indian Maritime University, Dr. Shankar will deliver on all of those pledges and I would say vision statements that have been made. So, all the very best in that endeavor. Now, I want to just, before I conclude, add a few points, and I think this is something that is actually gratuitous advice. That means you're not asking for it, I'm simply giving it to you, students. Of course, as I said, the world is there before you, and the sky is the limit. There is no ceiling in front of you. You have the best education, the best inputs, and you are at the threshold of an industry that is going to explode upwards. In other words, that is going to increase exponentially in terms of the investments that our country is going to make in your sector. But please do remember that all of it has to be backed up, as I said, by hard work, dedication, commitment. Also remember that in our country we have a Guru Shishya Parampara, which means that you must respect those who have imparted this that is something that's invaluable. You can get money, you can get wealth, you can get all sorts of other benefits. You will rise up in promotion terms. But the knowledge that you have today and the knowledge that will hold you in good state as you go along your careers is something that you can never forget. The second, of course, is make sure that you're part of strong alumni within the Indian Maritime University, because that is an important factor. The university was set up in 2008, and you have to create this network of alumni that will serve you throughout your careers. Of course, needless to say, you will constantly update yourself, because we are also in a challenging environment. You're not without your competition. There's a lot of competition in what you do. And updating in a constantly changing environment, because maritime science, maritime management, maritime law, maritime architecture, all of this is changing very rapidly. There's much greater automation. AI is changing things around the world, artificial intelligence, new technologies are coming in. And you will be constantly at the cutting edge to be ahead of the game. And I think that is very, very important. To all the 1,974 people who are graduating today from the 6 INU campuses and the 17 affiliated institutes, my very, very best wishes. I'm hopeful and I'm sure that when you step out to the world to fulfill your dreams, the flag of our nation will always fly high. As I said, there are myriad opportunities for you as you go along to serve or to lead. And I have no doubt that you will set a mark in whichever area of the industry that you decide to make your career. And of course, don't forget the fact that you were launched from one of the best institutes, the Indian Maritime University. So all my very best wishes. Nandri, thank you.
So thank you so much for those inspiring words. Now it's time for us to end the convocation. May I request the Honorable Vice Chancellor to dissolve this convocation.
I dissolve this convocation.
Thank you, ma'am. The dignitaries and the audience are requested to kindly rise for the national anthem. The audience are requested to remain standing till the academic procession has departed the convocation hall.